UK artists are big in US, but at home their music has mostly failed to break through, as lack of Brit nominations shows. Revair Nelson, the veteran DJ and broadcaster, has said R&B remains the hardest music to sell in the UK, with artists still struggling to make their mark, and some turning to the US for chart success. Nelson remembers jumping up and down every time a British R&B act made it into the charts during his pioneering BBC Radio 1 show in the 90s and 00s. "I was sort of saying to myself, I know this is a one-off," Nelson said. "That's the music R&B I love the most, and it's probably the hardest music to sell in this country. It just is. It's always been." His beloved genre has been thrust back into the spotlight after criticisms of this year's Brit Awards, which take place on Saturday, for failing to nominate any R&B artists in its combined pop and R&B category or any other leading categories. The only exception is the R&B group Flow, who won the Brits Rising Star Award last December. For Nelson, the omission raises questions about why British R&B has failed to take off in a country where other forms of black music, such as grime and drill, have broken through what was once thought to be impenetrable barriers. Carlin Calder, the founder of the independent record label Vibeout, said when she started in the music industry 10 years ago, there was little enthusiasm to push R&B music in the UK. "It got me really frustrated at times because I would meet the most talented songwriters and producers from the UK and their talent was overlooked. Some, like Ella Mai, turned to the US with great success." In 2018, she became the first UK star to top the US R&B singles chart since 1992. But things have quietly changed over the past few years in the UK, Calder added, with British R&B artists flourishing and selling out shows. Well-established artists such as Jorja Smith, who Nelson describes as a generational talent, Mabel and Ray have been able to build on their huge commercial success. Others pointed to Mahalia and Tiana Major 9, both of whom were picked by Adele to perform at her Hyde Park show in 2022, and Cleo Sol, JVCK James, Bella, Scribs Riley, Shea Universe, as well as groups such as Flow and Children of Zeus, who have racked up significant streams online, as proof the genre is not only thriving, but reaching new heights. This has only been possible, industry experts say, as a result of work done by an emerging underground scene to support and develop artists. The lack of interest from industry leaders led to a DIY boom a decade ago, with people starting their own R&B labels and management companies, while artists did as much as they could themselves. JVCK James, who is featured in Apple Music's Up Next program, was signed by Calder after she heard his songs on SoundCloud. He describes his setup at home, with a studio mic and other equipment, as a privilege. "I like to work by myself. So when I put my head down, I can really lock in and create something magical," he said. "I've been lucky enough not to have pressure from any label telling me what to do, telling me how I should make my music." Some criticized what they felt to be the short-sighted nature in developing emerging R&B artists. "What can be quite frustrating is that you hear someone come out with a song and they never ever get an opportunity to grow if the follow-up song doesn't necessarily take off as the first song did," the artist manager Nathan Burke, who represents Cleo Sol and the producer in Flow, said. "It may not take off straight away, but you keep developing and over time, when you see that return on investment, everyone's going to win." While the critically acclaimed artist Neo Jessica Joshua, better known as Now, agreed that R&B is probably one of the hardest to break into in the UK, the genre continues to do well internationally. Now, whose second album, Saturn, was nominated for a Grammy in 2020, added, "I have a massive fan base in America. They really understand British R&B and they really love it because it doesn't sound like the R&B that they know. We've got our own flair and twist." David Orleja, who manages Tiana Major 9, said the internet had allowed British R&B artists to have access to audiences across the world at their fingertips. Spotify, Amazon, Apple Music, or Tidal, these massive platforms are backing UK R&B. "They're putting us in the same world," on the same platform, and on the same playlist as a lot of the artists that we look up to. It just made it a lot easier and shows there's definitely an audience for it, people want it. DJ Ace, who presents BBC Radio 1 Extra's R&B show, said while R&B had been ignored in the UK, executives in the US were taking notice of recent talent. I've just come back from LA and everybody was talking about UK R&B, which blew my head. Over here, R&B artists are struggling to get heard and noticed. There was excitement among managers, artists, and DJs for the year to come, particularly with the success of records such as SZA's. DJ Ace is preparing to take a group of artists, including Jazz Carries, James Vickery, Kadeem Tyrell, and Nalaya, to this year's South by Southwest Festival in Austin, Texas. I think this year is gonna be absolutely phenomenal, DJ Ace said. There's a global audience that really wants to hear us and the UK scene is so attractive.